Hey guys, Mr. Daldas here. Just want to share with you Chapter 8, Section 4, Content and Culture Flourish. For this section, you're just going to be listening to this video, looking at what we talk about, seeing a couple of examples of some architecture, and you're going to be putting these notes into your document. In case you're wondering what that document looks like, this is it right here. Chapter 8, Section 4, High and Late Middle Ages. We're talking about culture flourishing during this time. Okay, so what I will do is I will go through these slides with you. They are highlighted. The slides have the titles at the top, so any information that needs to go in this box right here, you will see in the slideshow. It'll have a red title heading, so any information that has the matching title heading, you will put it in this box here. Okay. So the three things that we're going to be focusing on during this lecture is: how did medieval universities advance learning? How did new ideas affect medieval thought? And what styles of literature and architecture and art developed in the High and Late Middle Ages? For the first box, medieval universities. Medieval universities emerged. So here what we have is economic and political conditions are going to improve. The need for education is going to expand. Now keep in mind, they are producing a lot of items. There's a growing middle class in the country at this time, and on the continent at this time. And schools are going to start to spring up. What you need to understand is by the 1100s, schools are going to train clergy. Okay, so the original schools were church schools, essentially, and they were going to train future members of the clergy to teach and work at churches. Okay, these cathedral schools are going to become the first universities that you start to see. The first universities in the world that we're aware of are in Salerno in Bologna in Italy, and then Oxford in England and Paris in France. Okay, those are going to be your first major world universities. Now, folks, we have a litany of classes here at Godwin Heights that you have to take. We also have some electives. Back then, the only classes you could take were arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, music, grammar, rhetoric, and logic. And as you can tell, 2 of those are math. So you had 7 liberal arts to choose from, and 2 of them were math. Ladies, I really wish that this was a different time, but you were not allowed to attend the universities at this moment. It was for men only at this point in time. Obviously, that is going to be a common theme throughout history for the first several units that we talk about here. But that's not to say that women couldn't do it. They just were not allowed at the time. So with all this knowledge that's going to be passed on to the clergy, and then the clergy is going to teach the regular people, what you will see is new learning start to develop. Okay, there's going to be an explosion of knowledge. Okay, that's going to arrive in Europe during the High Middle Ages. It's not just Europe though that's going to acquire new learning. A lot of this stuff is going to come out of the Middle East. Okay, Muslim scholars had translated the work of Greek thinkers into Arabic. Okay, these translations are going to go gangbusters all across the Muslim world. Anytime there's new kind of knowledge out there that is globally accepted, it's going to explode onto the scene. So these ancient texts are going to spread across the Muslim world, which, as you guys know from maps that we've looked at, spread from the Middle East around Israel, Jerusalem, all the way through northern Africa and into Spain. Okay. It's not just Muslim scholars that are going to have access to these works either. You're going to see Jewish and Christian scholars are going to translate the work into Latin, so they're going to take these works that were translated by Muslim scholars, they're going to put them into Latin, which at the time was like a universal language. And what's going to happen with those new translations is they're going to get to Western Europe. And what that is going to do, guys, that is going to be the engine of change for revolution in terms of learning. This is going to be an issue, though. The predominant religion in Europe at the time was Christianity or Catholicism, and these writings are going to pose a challenge to that. All right, the thought here is, and it comes all the way back from Aristotle, people should use reason to discover basic truths. So if you have a question or something you want to research, you need to discover that. Okay, Christians, however, believe that everything is based on faith. They believe that the church was the final authority for all questions. So any question that you had ever in life, Christians believe could be answered with the Bible. It's the way God wanted it, or it's the way Jesus wanted it. The issue with the Christians and what they're going to have at first is that the ideas were based on logic and reason, and that is going to challenge this faith-based acceptance of things. So people are going to be like, well, wait a minute. So you're telling me mountains form this way, or the scientific process proves this? In a manner of speaking, yes. You're going to see that there's going to be a challenge to Christian thought, which was 100% based on faith. Christian scholars known as scholastics. Okay, it's not like the magazine you guys had maybe when you were in elementary, but this is different. They tried to resolve that conflict. All right, Christian scholars, they do a lot of thinking, and so they want to resolve that conflict between faith and reason, and so they developed a school of thought called scholasticism. What it did is it took logic and it supported Christian beliefs. All right, so it used logic to support Christian beliefs. One of the most noted scholastics was Thomas Aquinas, who would later become a saint. It's actually what Aquinas University here in Grand Rapids is named after. What he came up with, he said that faith and reason exist in harmony. Both lead to the same truth, that God ruled over an orderly universe. So using logic, that's what St. Thomas Aquinas did. So again, we are in the Europeans acquire new learning. Still in that same box, Europeans acquire new learning, we're going to see some scientific works get translated from Arabic to Greek. Okay, this is then going to reach Europe and Spain. The Byzantine Empire is going to bring that information and use it. So what's going to happen is, once you see the scientific works get translated, Christians, the scholars in particular at the universities, they're going to get their hands on these thoughts about medicine, and it's going to revolutionize the world. Euclid is a person. He's going to work on geometry. You're going to see Arab scientists get involved here. And these, like, guys, you got to understand with books and knowledge is that once you have a universal language, or you can translate these materials, these thoughts, these ideas are going to travel across the world faster than I don't know what. You guys with your internet and your apps like Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram, you guys spread information across the world at a very rapid pace, and this is the precursor to all of that. Okay. Europeans are going to adopt the Hindu-Arabic numerals, much easier to use. Okay, so the number system that we have today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to infinity, is going to be developed and adapted from Hindu-Arabic numerals. Okay, the Roman numeral system, which you guys, when we go through our reading, you know, Otto I, Pope Urban III, you know, the II, the IV, the VII, those numbers are going to be gone. They're going to get rid of them. It was very cumbersome, and it's going to be replaced with the Hindu-Arabic numerals. What's interesting about this is, again, once you have a universal language of numbers, you're going to see scientists and mathematicians make extraordinary advances in fields. It was not nearly as difficult. Once everything's in the same language, it makes everything way faster, more efficient, and allows people to think differently. So, guys, there's going to be little progress made in Europe at the beginning of the Middle Ages in terms of science. Okay, so thinking, math, stuff like that, sure, you're going to see some changes. But a lot of people still heavily believe in the church and their teachings, and they don't want to mess with that. So it's going to take another couple hundred years before you see some major groundbreaking, earth-shaking changes in Europe. So let's talk about literature. All right, this is another box for you guys, medieval literature here. So as economic and political conditions improve, Europeans are going to make notable advancements in literature. Now, like I said, the thinking of what's going on is going to be the most important here, okay? And the biggest thing you see is writing is going to be done in the vernacular. Okay, what is the vernacular? That's the language of everyday people, okay? What this is going to do, these writers are going to write books that people understand. They don't have to think about or be intimidated by. They're going to read these books. Okay, some modern day examples of vernacular would be like your Harry Potters, your Hunger Games, things like that. They are written in a very modern, how you would talk to somebody language. There are three main pieces of literature that are going to come out during this time. We're going to talk about them briefly: the Song of Roland, Dante's Divine Comedy, and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Now, what are these about? Well, the Song of Roland, or in the Song of Roland, that whole story, it's an epic. It's like a really long poem. And what it does is it follows one of Charlemagne's knights. Okay, and what this knight does is he goes on this journey, and it's faith-based journey, right? He's going on this mission that he believes he's on from God, and he's going to sacrifice his life in the name of honor. The whole point there is that you got to be willing to sacrifice everything. That is the point of that epic. But again, written in everyday language, going to get some people pretty fired up. Up next, we have Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Okay, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. All this does is it follows a group of people, a band of pilgrims, if you will. They're traveling to a tomb. Specifically, they are traveling to the tomb of St. Thomas Becket. And as they go, you're going to see a collection of individuals that range anywhere from a knight to a plowman, which is a farmer, a merchant, a miller, and a monk and a nun. And basically, they're going to share out their stories of life. And it's going to paint this incredibly accurate picture of what medieval life is for all these people, especially the knight, the merchant, and the nun. It's just going to, and a monk. It's going to do a really good job of painting a picture of what medieval life looked like. Up next is Dante's Divine Comedy, and I have a quote here. This is a quote from Dante's Divine Comedy. And this quote is what Dante reads as he enters hell. Now, normally when you hear the word comedy, you don't necessarily immediately associate it with hell, but that's what happens. As he approaches hell, he receives the quote here, "Abandon all hope, ye that enter here." So what is this divine comedy? Well, divine meaning religious. Comedy is supposed to be funny at that, well, what we see as funny. It's a poem, and it's Dante going on this imaginary journey into hell and purgatory. Also, a part of this are going to be visions of what heaven looks like. But essentially, it focuses on Dante talking with people from history and basically discussing how they got to hell in the first place, like what they did to get there. This story is going to use humor, tragedy, and also focuses on the quest for religious understanding. Now, remember, as this time progresses and stories are written in the vernacular over here, you're going to start to see more things like Dante's poem here, where people can actually read it and they can come to grips with these big concepts of like heaven and hell and purgatory and what they are. So Dante is going to help a lot of people out with that. Here's a couple of illuminations from the book, a couple of illuminations from Dante's Inferno. As you can see here, this ledge looks like people are walking on, and then obviously a pit underneath it representing hell. Over here you see all these different layers representing the various portions of hell, but this book is full of illuminations and other ideas. So again, very popular book during the time. One of the other major changes you're going to see is architecture and art. Architecture is going to change absolutely during this time. You're going to see the cathedrals, the churches specifically, are going to start to develop very tall structures, very beautiful. They are going to showcase wealth and devotion of Christians. And that is going to be, during the time, how people believe that God wanted them to do, is to show your faith to God with lots of money. So that's going to change some things. The Gothic style is going to develop from the Romanesque style. Now, what is the Romanesque style? It reflected Roman influences. So if you look at this right here, this is a church. This is the Pisa Cathedral in Italy. Very Romanesque. All right, notice the columns that you see here, these arches, very small windows, not a very tall building. This is going to be the definition of what Romanesque is. Okay. Gothic style is going to be a lot more flamboyant, a lot more bright, big, beautiful structures, Flying buttresses, that's a vocab term that you guys need to be made aware of. Stone supports, they stand outside the church. Just absolutely stunning, beautiful structures. So here's a picture of what those flying buttresses would look like on like a drawing or a 3D rendering of it. And what it looks like in actuality is this right here. You notice these gorgeous flying buttresses down here outside the church. That allows the church to be a lot taller. So just to compare, Romanesque, Gothic. Romanesque, Gothic. What does the inside of one of these Gothic cathedrals look like? Check this out. Look at how beautiful this is. The stained glass window lets in lots of light. When you walk in, you see this young lady right down here. Her eyes are naturally drawn upward to the light, which is what they developed these churches for. People would walk into these cathedrals and their attention would be drawn upward and what's upward at the time? Well, that's where heaven is. That's where God is. So the whole point of these is to draw your eyes upward. Okay. So that is architecture for the time. Notice the buildings start to get a lot more tall, a lot more flamboyant, very beautifully laid out. One other change you're going to see is in art. You're going to see a lot more sculptors. They're going to start to portray religious themes. Stained glass windows, which you guys just did a project on, are going to become kind of the key to what it is that these churches have, these beautiful, beautiful stained glass windows. But they add to the splendor that is the Gothic church. You're also going to see illumination or artistic decorations of the book, which we saw with Dante's Inferno. This is what these stained glass windows look like, some of them up close, guys. What you'll notice about these windows is that they depict scenes from the Bible. Okay, that's the whole point to these windows, is to not only are they beautiful, but they also depict different scenes from the Bible. Okay. Here it looks like you have Jesus sitting down to his teaching with his disciples off to the side. Something that looks like it might be the Last Supper, maybe a depiction of that. So just beautiful works of art. And again, the inside of these cathedrals over here, just absolutely stunning what you see over there. So just take a moment and check those out, and they're absolutely beautiful. Here, guys, I'm just going to encourage you to pause the video if you need to. This is just a review of literature and then architecture and art that we just talked about it. Just to recap for you guys, that's what you're going to see here. Here's just some additional information if you need it. Again, fills in just some information about university scholarship, literature, and the arts. Just again, summarizing what we talked about. All four of these items, guys, university, scholarship, literature, and the arts, are going to lead to this learning and culture flourish that we see during this time period. So please keep that in mind as you are proceeding. You may pause it here if you missed any of these bullet points. A couple of questions for you to practice. What did the scholastics believe? Take a moment to answer this question. You may pause the video. They believed that logic and faith could coexist. Next question. What are the two main architectural styles of the High Middle Ages? Take a moment, pause this, and make your guess. If you guessed Romanesque and Gothic, you would be correct. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this presentation. Hopefully you understand now how medieval universities advanced learning. Hopefully you understand how the new learning affected medieval thought. And I really hope that you take a moment to look at some of the architecture, the styles of literature, architecture, and art that are going to be developed during this time. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great night.